As we introduced the Sermon on the Mount to you last week, we talked about several things. One of those things was to make sure that you do not run aground with this series. Now, what does that mean, running aground? What I'm talking about is to look at the Sermon on the Mount as something that is so hard, that contains so much law, that you don't think you can do it. So what happens a lot of times when people think the task is impossible, they give up, right? They give up and they say, I can't do it. The ideals are too hard. The idea of turning the other cheek, I can't fathom how I can possibly live up to that. But there are some ways that you can guard yourself from running aground. I gave you 3 last week. I'll give them to you just to recap real quickly. Number 1, make sure you don't view the Sermon on the Mount as law coming down from above, but as ethics being given to you from beyond. Now here's the distinction. When law comes down to you from above, it's just saying, here's this, do this, don't do that. Here's the rule, make sure you stay inside the lines. But what Jesus is giving us in the Sermon on the Mount, even though there's a lot of rules, is He's giving us something very different. He's giving us what we would call ethics from beyond. Now what does that mean? It means that Jesus came preaching a kingdom. And in the kingdom that Jesus is preaching, He is giving us the ideals of that kingdom in Matthew chapter 5 through 7. And He is saying, look, if you want to be kingdom people, if you want to be the sort of people who are living in my kingdom, this is what your character is going to look like. So you look at this sermon as ideals from beyond. But then the second thing to guard against, to make sure that you don't run aground with this sermon series, is to remember the parable from last week. The one who hears these words of mine and does them is like what? A man, help me here, church, who built his house on a rock. And when the rains came and the floods came, the rock, wow, did you hear the song this morning? The rock didn't move. And the house didn't move, it stood firm. But the one who hears these words of mine, specifically related to the Sermon on the Mount, and fails to put them into practice, will be like one who built his house on what? Sand. And when the rain and the floods came, the house fell. And Jesus said, not only did it fall, great was its fall. It's like those disaster videos that the Weather Channel always puts out right after a hurricane. It's so bad that you can't look away. It's like disaster entertainment. You feel bad. You're like, there's this person's whole life floating down the river, but I can't look away. Great is the fall of that house. So I encouraged you last week not to run aground in this sermon by remembering, while you may be responsible for building the house, you are not responsible for the foundation of the house. So there may be things in your life that get out of order with the house, but it's a lot easier to fix a wall out of plumb than it is to fix a bad, shaky foundation. So what do we do, church? When we hear these hard sayings of Jesus, we remember that we're building on the rock. And only a fool would move from rock to sand because you felt like you were failing on the rock. If you're going to fall, the best and safest place to fall is to fall on the rock. The third thing, to make sure that you don't run aground in this sermon series, is to remember that God is for you. Listen, He was for that ragtag group of disciples. He's for you, okay? How many places in the Gospels can we point to where the disciples messed up? But did Jesus repudiate and reject His disciples when they messed up? No, friends. He didn't even reject Peter when he denied Him. I don't think Peter was thinking much about turn the other cheek when he cut that dude's ear off in the garden. Do you? Was Peter living up to the ideals of the Sermon on the Mount? Did Jesus love Peter? The key is to remember that God is for you, but also to remember that these ideals are worth striving for. Today, however, I've got some good news for you. Because Jesus starts out his Sermon on the Mount by giving us some words of comfort and security. These words you may have heard, they're called the Beatitudes. Has anybody heard that word before, the Beatitudes? We used to have this little play. In fact, my brother Seth is here this morning. He was probably in it. Were you ever in the Beatitudes play? That's church? You probably were. We probably stuck you in a costume and flung you on stage. We used to have this little play at our church growing up called the Beatitudes, and all these adorable little kids dressed up in bee costumes, and they would sing about the Beatitudes. It was precious, it really was. Remember Seth? Merry heart does good, like a medicine good, like you should stand up and sing it if you want to. Okay, all right, we'll do it. The Beatitudes. But beatitude is simply something that means a blessing that one receives. In Jewish literature, this thing called the Beatitude was something that was actually quite common. Jesus wasn't the first person to speak in Beatitudes. The way it would be structured was pretty common, and it would go like this. It will go well with the one who blank. For that one shall receive blank. You can fill in the blank with good things. And some commentators, including Craig Keener, have suggested that it will go well with is probably a better interpretation than blessed is the one. Notice what we're seeing here this morning. And you can read along with me, and I'm going to slightly change the translation to explain kind of the concept that I'm talking about. In chapter 5 and verse 3. It will go well with the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It will go well with those who mourn, for they will be comforted. It will go well with the meek, for they will inherit the earth. It will go well with those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. That's the Beatitudes we're going to get to today. We'll next week get to the rest of them. I want you to notice the one who speaks these to us today first. John Wesley gives us a great reminder. By the way, John Wesley preached more sermons on this text than any other text in his lifetime. John Wesley reminds us, let us observe who it is that is here speaking, that we may take heed how we hear. I want to say that one more time. Let us observe who it is that is here speaking, that we may take heed how we hear. It is the Lord of heaven and earth, the creator of all, who as such has a right to dispose of all his creatures, the Lord our governor, whose kingdom is from everlasting and ruleth over all, the great lawgiver. So, my friends, as we hear these words today, remember who is speaking these words to us. There are many parallels to how Jesus speaks and to the life of Moses and how he spoke. Whenever you're reading your Bible, I want you to remember this. When you're reading the New Testament, remember to have the background music of the Old Testament playing. Because the Old Testament is the setup for the New. They are not in conflict. They are in beautiful continuity with one another. And there are so many of these beautiful parallels that will illustrate the point that John Wesley was making. The great lawgiver speaking to us in the New Testament. Remember Moses, when he received the law from God, what did he do first? He ascended up onto a mountain. What was that mountain called, Bible readers? You're like, Sinai. Because if I say it quietly enough and I'm wrong, I won't be embarrassed. Sinai, you were right. I heard you. He ascends up to the mountain. He receives the law. Now, are you noticing what Jesus is doing? He goes up onto the mountain, he sits down, and he takes his teaching stance. The stance of a teaching rabbi. But there's something different about this man and how he speaks. You see, Moses receives the law and he mediates it to the children of Israel. That's not how Jesus speaks. When Jesus sits down and begins to speak, if you go to the end of the sermon in Matthew chapter 7, it says that the crowds were astonished. Why? Because he did not speak as the scribes and the Pharisees do, but he speaks as one having authority. Jesus is God. Jesus is the great lawgiver. Jesus sits in the authoritative seat of God to teach us the ways of God. When you hear this man sit down to teach, God is sitting down to teach. Now let these words comfort your hearts. Once again, verse number 3. Hear the word of the Lord. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now there's been a temptation of commentators with this verse, including John Wesley, who through the years have interpreted this verse when we say poor in spirit to mean a poverty of spirit, meaning not a literal poverty, but a poverty in your spirit where you understand your deficit of righteousness. And if you acknowledge that, that means you're poor in spirit. But they would say it has nothing to do with physical or material wealth. Now, if there's anything you've learned about me, if you've heard me preach very long, is I give you the position I don't agree with first. Right? And here's the thing, folks. We have parallel passages in the Gospels that we can compare to one another to help us understand better the message of Jesus. And the parallel passage here is found in Luke 6 and verse 20. And Jesus there is recorded as saying, "Blessed are you who are poor now." Even if we were to go with the over-spiritualized answer that says that Jesus isn't speaking directly to the poor, but only some over-spiritualized thing, then would it not be the case that the poor are the ones who often struggle in their spirit to be hopeful about the future? To wonder, is there anything better than this? Does it get any better than this? Because what I'm looking around and seeing in front of me is a life of hardship. Friends, I believe Jesus was speaking very literally when he said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now we know it is not a sin to have money. Not a sin. It's not a sin to build wealth. It's not a sin to want to leave something behind for your children. It's certainly not a sin to want money so that you can bless others with that money. But we would have to deny Scripture if we said today that quite often Jesus had some very hard words for the rich and the wealthy. Yes? Now thankfully, we've had about 2,000 years of church history for Christians to look back on this sermon and to try to mold their life, even if they're a person of means, to mold their life within the bounds of this sermon. And some of the greatest Christians I've ever met in my entire life are people with means that exceed most people's. And anyone with money is going to tell you that having money is quite stressful sometimes. Not always all it cracked up to be. You know, my grandmother used to tell me that all the time. She'd say, "I think the reason the Lord won't give me money is because He doesn't know if I can handle it." But she'd look up to heaven and say, "But Lord, let me just try one time. Just one time. Let me try it." It's like the guy who is in the locker room with all these other guys after a workout at the gym. All of a sudden, the phone rings. He picks it up off the bench and begins to talk. And this voice comes up, honey, I just wanted to let you know that I found this beautiful new fur coat. It's only $2,000. Can I get it, honey?" And he goes, "Oh, sure, honey." "Oh, good. Well, while I've got you on the phone, hey, I was also wondering, the Mercedes dealership is running a real deal this week. They've got this loaded package. Car's only $120,000. Can I go for that too?" "Absolutely, sweetheart. And if we're going to spend that much, I want all the options maxed out on this thing." "Okay, honey, thank you so much. Yeah, bye-bye, sweetheart." The guy looks around with a grin and goes, "Anybody know whose phone this is?" Money carries problems with it sometimes. Not always easy. Jesus says, so blessed is the poor. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I want you to think about all the places in the world where Christianity is exploding today. And if I could say it this way, where the church has power today. Is in regions of the world where people have only a hope in the kingdom that is coming, and none in the kingdoms of this world. The problem with the American church is that we have too many things competing for our loyalty, and there are too many places to put our hope in. People have their hope in a government. People have their hope in a system. People have their hope in insurance. So they buy tons of it. People have their hope in every single thing other than Jesus. But blessed are the poor in spirit, for all they got is the kingdom of heaven. And it's easy for them to hold on to the hope that is Jesus Christ. And by the way, there was a Christian who challenged me on this a few months ago, and it has helped put a lot of things in perspective for me. If you are here and you are an American this morning, almost without exception, and there are some, but if you are here in the United States of America this morning, almost without exception, you are the rich in the New Testament. You live better than 99% of the world without exception. You live better than the wealthy people in these scriptures. So remember, friends, and although Christ is not calling for us to take a vow of poverty, it would be good for us to position ourselves and our mindset in such a way that we say to God, I am completely dependent on you. Because I believe, church in America, we've got too many people depending on themselves. Come on, somebody. Verse number 4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. See, throughout this sermon, Jesus is going to give us some very unconventional wisdom. Notice I said unconventional wisdom. To the Jewish mind at this time, they were extremely practical. If you read their Old Testament Proverbs, they're going to tell you how you are to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. And this was a good thing. But what Jesus comes along and does is he sort of reverses the social order. But what he does here is puts everything in the perspective of the ultimate vindication that God's people we receive. We are not in a place where it has been achieved in the here and now. Let me help you with this. So those in this sermon that we'll go on later to see described, they're getting their cheeks slapped, they're getting stolen from, they're getting disenfranchised, they're getting slandered in the public, and throughout the whole thing, they're rejoicing. I mean, that sounds almost as crazy as somebody saying, blessed are all these people who are mourning losses. That's counterintuitive. What do you mean, blessed are people who are mourning? Blessed are people who are mourning? That's as crazy as saying, blessed is the one who gets slapped on the cheek and slandered. And so on, and so on. You see, it's because Jesus is putting things in a kingdom perspective for us. Remember, these are ethics from beyond. That means we are beginning as the church to order our lives right now as if the kingdom is here now. And as we do that, it puts our whole life in perspective. Jesus will go on to say that you can't serve wealth and God. You can't look for material things and serve God at the same time. Your devotion and your ultimate loyalty has to be in one place. Why? Why, Jesus? Why would you put it in those terms? Because when you're looking from the perspective of the eternal kingdom, the temporary begins to mean less to you. That's why martyrs marched into the Colosseum singing praises to God. That's why those Egyptian Christians on that beachhead with those radical Islamists, the last words coming out of their mouth as they looked towards heaven was, Esau! Jesus, proclaiming to the world that my hope is not in my comfort, my hope is not in my home, my hope is not in my possessions. I may be mourning now, but there is something greater on the horizon for me. And friends, that's something that the world cannot give you, but here's the good news. It cannot take it from you. That is a hope that goes beyond. The mourners shall be comforted. I love the scripture in Isaiah 61 that Jesus used to start his ministry out with. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to proclaim good news. Now listen to what he says on down in verses 2 and 3. To comfort all those who mourn in Zion. Our God is a God of comforting those who mourn. The mourners can rejoice because a new day is coming. Now this verse won't be on the screen, but I've got to give this to somebody today. This is for somebody. Psalm 126. Psalm 126, verses 5 through 6. May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves. Friends, it is a constant theme of Scripture that trouble doesn't last always. It is a constant theme of Scripture that weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. You may be mourning your loss now, but know this: all those who mourn will be comforted. Verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. There's a Greek term that Jesus uses here for meek. Praise. It literally means gentle, humble, not being over-impressed by a sense of one's self-importance. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 29, Jesus is called meek. In Numbers 12 and verse 3, the scripture says about Moses, here's another one of those parallels, it says about Moses that Moses was the meekest man in all the earth. Now some of you are thinking, wait a minute, I thought Moses wrote Numbers. That's kind of weird for him to say that. That's for another talk some other time, okay? Wesley describes meekness in this way. I love how he puts it. It's a word we don't use very often. It's probably been a really long time since somebody was complimented by saying, they're so meek. They're so meek. Wesley described it this way. Meekness is like putting the reins on. And it holds back the parts of us that might be harsh or cruel or overbearing. Meekness holds those things back. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean that you won't be passionate about things. In fact, meekness is one of the greatest qualities in leaders. Because leaders have to be passionate, and leaders have to go after what they believe in. And we've seen leaders throughout history who have wanted to see justice, and they've had a passion for it, and they want to go after justice for people. And that's great, and I'm thankful for leaders that way. But what meekness does is meekness applied to a person like that means that they won't be harsh or mean or cruel in their approach to people. They won't be off-putting. Meek leaders who are passionate about a cause can rally people around them because people see a personality of humility in them that they can get behind. They don't come across as a know-it-all. They don't come across as somebody who has all the answers and you have none. They come across as somebody who is literally there to be a servant. That's what meekness is. And now this would have really struck a chord with the people Jesus was speaking to. You see, when Jesus says, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Essentially, that term translated earth comes from the Greek term gay. And that term actually could be translated land. Now, this would have been something that the Jewish people would have been looking at very heavily. They would have been saying, we want the land back. this time in history, their land wasn't theirs. They were allowed to live there, but they didn't own it anymore. They weren't a sovereign nation anymore. Their exile was continuing on. And so Jesus is saying, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Well, I want you to put it in the context of the first century here for a second and think about what was going on. You had all these zealots, right? Freedom fighters, they were called. People who were ready to take up arms against the Roman government, ready to fight these guys. And why? So that they could inherit the land. But what does Jesus say? Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. He says, you see those guys? I'm talking about the exact opposite of what they are. One of the things that drove the Pharisees crazy about Jesus was that he was so meek. It's really hard to corner a meek person. Drove the Pharisees nuts. The last beatitude we're looking at today is in verse 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. When the term righteousness is used in Scripture, it can also refer to justice or vindication. As in the parable of the widow and the unjust judge, where she is crying out for her vindication. Jesus says, how much more will the Father in heaven give vindication for his people? You see, these people are longing for God's kingdom to come. And they're longing for God's kingdom to come for some very specific reason. Because they see injustices in the world and they want God to set it right. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, justice, vindication. For they will be filled. There are so many causes today that are telling you how you can get involved in seeing justice happen in the lives of people. I mean, while I was in college and seminary, it seemed like we heard them all the time. Because one thing I love about college students is that they're nothing if not passionate, right? And they can get behind a cause and believe in it. But you guys may be like me. I found myself just sort of inundated and overwhelmed with all of the different causes. I mean, over here, somebody was telling me about the dangers of buying Folgers coffee. And your reaction was sort of like mine, but then when you hear him explain it, you're like, yeah, that's dangerous to buy that. Let's not put this on the internet. I'll probably get sued or something. But then it ranged all the way to just horrific things like rescuing people from the sex trafficking industry. I mean, legitimate social causes that we wanted to see justice happen in. And then you get on Facebook, right? And then you're scrolling through like thousands of causes a day that you can get involved in. And the thought comes to your mind, how can we and what do we do? But here's the beautiful thing about it, and it brings me such great comfort, is that number one, God longs for justice in this world as you do. That's number one. And number two, there is a promise that those who really are hungry for righteousness and justice in our world, they will be filled. That is a promise. They will be filled. The great thing is in knowing that I don't have to solve every single problem, but you know what? I am responsible for my corner of the neighborhood. And I don't mean a my for and no more kind of mentality. I mean going out into my community. And whether I see it as a neighborhood, or I see it as an ethnic group, or I see it as a socioeconomic status, I need to be reaching out and saying, how can I make a difference? Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness. You see, the thing is, we are kingdom people, and we know that God is going to set all things right. But remember, this is ethics from beyond, meaning we live now what it looks like then. You see, then it's all equality. Then it is all people coming together of all races, in every nation of the world, in every economic status, they're all going to be coming together around the throne on that day saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. What can we do and strive for now to see it look that way? We will be filled if we hunger after those things. But I want to say a bit more. You may be here, you may be discouraged, wondering if things will ever be set right in our world. I love the words of Martin Luther King Jr., who says, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Man, I appreciate that. You're not incapable of making an impact. You can have a part. I'll tell you one area that hit me hard this week that I believe we need to be striving for justice and righteousness in is this area. There are people all over our community who struggle with mental illness. And there are great injustices, I believe, towards these people right now. I've said it in here before, but I'm going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep doing my little part and lifting up my voice here and saying this. That we so stigmatize people with mental health issues to the point that it is unjust what we're doing. And I hate to say that the church, Big C in America, has been one of the greatest perpetrators of this injustice. That if you've got a kidney problem, you won't hesitate to tell somebody to go to the doctor. But if they admit to you that they've been struggling with depression, you'll tell them that they've got a spiritual issue and they're less than a Christian than somebody else. Friends, we have to speak out against that kind of injustice. When the enemy comes in and he takes one of the young girls from our community in Walhalla from us, we need to have a resolve to be all the more vigilant in creating a space where people can talk without repercussion about what they're feeling. I feel it's important for me to say as a pastor that this community is a safe place where you can talk without repercussion about what's going on in your mind. We will not judge you and we are not afraid of it. And in a crowd this size, you can believe that someone has struggled with depression too. Let us be a support. Let us be a family. Let us be a help in your life. That's me this morning. That's my heart. That's where I am longing for righteousness and justice. I'm longing for it. I'm hungering for it. I've seen it in my family, and I am hungry for it. For people to stop with this stigmatizing and just start loving people. They need us. And you know what? We need them. All those who hunger and thirst for righteousness will be filled. Why? Because we have a perspective of the kingdom. Listen to me today. I want you to think this morning of our precious Jesus today. I want you to look to him because I don't know about you, but when I read these Beatitudes, I see Jesus. Jesus isn't just the one saying it. Jesus is describing perfectly who he is. Close your eyes just for a moment, and I want you to meditate with me on it. Think of the poor in spirit. Jesus was born into poverty in the lowliest of towns, and he lived on a daily wage. Think of those who mourn. Did you know that Jesus dealt with a great deal of grief and mourning in his life? Did you know that Jesus mourned over his nation who would not repent? Think of the meek this morning. Jesus knew that the greatest strength was not power over people, but that it was meekness and humility then think of those who hunger and thirst for righteousness' sake. Hunger and thirst for justice. Jesus wanted to do the will of his Father above all else. My friends, hear me well. I just felt a word for somebody this morning. And when I said what I said about depression, something happened in your heart. It started beating just a little bit faster. You have thought, and the enemy has told you that you're alone in this, that you can't share it. You definitely would never let your church family know about it because we're supposed to have it all together. That's a lie from Satan. Nobody in this room has it all together. We need each other. So I want you to hear this as a word specifically for you this morning. The first step that the Lord is saying for you is to come out of the shadows and stop suffering alone through this. Please stop suffering alone through this. Let us be with you. Let us help you in this struggle. I'm going to ask you to stand this morning. And I'm going to keep it simple. I believe that's what the Lord wanted you to hear this morning, and I'm just going to keep it very simple. This song that they're about to sing, it's called Broken Vessels. Raise your hand if you're a broken vessel. See, look around. We're broken and He's made us whole. I just want to ask you for a simple gesture this morning as you are listening to this song. Maybe you're somebody who you don't do all that hand-raising stuff. We'll leave that to them. They're charismatics. But if you're in here this morning and that word about depression spoke to your heart, here's what I want to ask you. As this song goes forth, I don't care who sees you, I don't care who you're declaring this to, but declare it to yourself and to God by just raising those hands up in the air with reckless abandon. Maybe you're not one who normally does this, but as we sing this, just lift it up to God with reckless abandon and worship Him and say, I'm a broken vessel. But you know what? In you, you're making something beautiful out of me. Let's worship, church.
Empty-handed, but
get to leave differently than you came in here this morning. You get to say that this morning. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. I just want to say that that's one of the marks of who we want to be. Amen. Welcome, church. We want to be a church that is awakened. That when you come in here, you sense the presence of something otherworldly. And you leave out of here transformed by the God whose presence inhabits this place. High five somebody next to you and say, I'm different. High five, I'm different. Amen. God is good. And all the time. One more, guys. Sing that old. Sing that old out. We see more clearly now than we did when we came in. We see your heart for us now, Lord. We see, God, that this beauty that's been in front of us the whole time has been so clouded by the voices of the enemy and our depression and our despair. But Lord, just today, you pushed back some of those clouds for us. You showed us once again that your heart is for us, that those who are hungry and thirsting after justice and righteousness will be filled. We thank you, God, for the promise of being filled with new life. And it's in the precious name of Jesus we ask all these things. And all God's people say,